The moment Surah Al-Nasr was revealed, the atmosphere around the Prophet Muhammad carried a quiet, profound weight. This short surah, only 3 verses long, held within it a message deeper than victory itself. It was a sign, a completion, and a gentle farewell wrapped in divine wisdom. The story begins in the final years of the Prophet's mission. After years of hardship, persecution, and migration, the Muslims were growing in number. The message of Islam was spreading across Arabia. Villages were entering the faith, and hearts were opening. Yet the greatest moment came when Allah granted the believers what once seemed impossible: the peaceful conquest of Makkah. There was no war, no bloodshed, no revenge. The Prophet entered Makkah with his head lowered in humility, riding a camel, tears in his eyes, remembering every difficulty his companions had endured. This city had once driven him out, mocked him, tortured his followers, and plotted to kill him. And now he returned not as a conqueror of land, but as a conqueror of hearts. As thousands accepted Islam, this victory symbolized not just a political triumph, but the fulfillment of a divine promise. It was during this period that Surah Al-Nasr was revealed. When the help of Allah comes, and the victory, and you see the people entering Allah's religion in crowds, then glorify the praises of your Lord and seek His forgiveness. Surely He is ever accepting of repentance. These verses carried a message that surprised even the companions. While they heard news of success, Umar ibn al-Khattab and Ibn Abbas understood something more. The surah was not just announcing victory. It was signaling that the Prophet's mission was nearing completion. The command to glorify and seek forgiveness was a gentle preparation that his time in this world was drawing to an end. The Prophet increased his remembrance of Allah, constantly repeating, Subhanaka Allahumma Rabbana wa bihamdika Allahumma gfirli. Even Aisha radiyallahu anha noticed how frequently he recited these words. And when she asked him why, he replied, It is what my Lord has commanded me after the revelation of Surah Al-Nasr. What looked like a celebration was actually a divine sign of closure. The conquest of Makkah marked the moment when Islam became firmly established. Tribes came one after another, not out of fear, but out of realization. They had seen truth prevail with dignity, mercy, and justice. They had witnessed a prophet who forgave his enemies, freed captives, and honored those who once oppressed him. This was the real victory. The victory of character, compassion, and divine truth. And Surah Al-Nasr captured this entire journey in 3 short verses, from help to victory, to mass acceptance of faith, and finally to humility before Allah. This is the beauty behind the surah, a reminder that every success must lead to gratitude, every achievement must lead to humility, and every blessing must lead us back to the one who granted it. It teaches us that true victory is never in power, but in submission to Allah. The message of Surah Al-Nasr is timeless. When success comes, when doors open, when life takes a turn for the better, remember to praise Allah, seek His forgiveness, and remain humble. Because the greatest victories of our lives are not celebrated in crowds, but in hearts connected to the Creator. As days passed after the revelation of Surah Al-Nasr, the companions noticed subtle changes in the Prophet. His worship increased, his supplication lengthened, and his humility became even more profound than before. It was as if he was preparing for a journey, one that only he understood fully. The companions would often see him standing in prayer for long hours, whispering words of glorification and forgiveness exactly as the surah commanded. They could sense that something had shifted, but out of respect, they did not ask. Only a few, like Ibn Abbas, deeply felt the hidden message within the verses that the messenger's mission was nearing its beautiful completion. The Muslims continued to witness how the teachings of Islam spread with such purity across the land. Delegations from every corner of Arabia arrived in Medina, coming not as conquerors or enemies, but as seekers of truth. They came with questions, with hope, with curiosity, and they returned with faith, inspired by the mercy and wisdom of the Prophet. During these days, the Prophet would often remind his companions that victory does not belong to power or numbers, but to Allah alone. He would say, Whoever humbles himself for the sake of Allah, Allah raises him. And his life was the greatest example of these words. One evening, as the sun set over Medina and the sky turned a soft gold, the Prophet gathered his companions and spoke to them with tenderness. He reminded them of gratitude, patience, and trust in Allah. He told them that success in this world is temporary, but success in the hereafter is everlasting. Every word he spoke felt like a final reminder, a last treasure of wisdom. The companions listened silently, absorbing every sentence, their hearts tightening with a feeling they could not fully understand. It was as if he was preparing them for a future where they would have to carry the message themselves. Surah Al-Nasr, though revealed as a sign of victory, quietly became a doorway to the Prophet's farewell. It was not sorrowful, it was peaceful, gentle, and filled with acceptance. Allah had completed his favor, fulfilled his promise, and perfected the religion. And now, the messenger was preparing to return to his Lord with a heart full of dhikr and gratitude. And this is what makes Surah Al-Nasr so unique. It is a surah that celebrates victory, but also teaches the art of departing with dignity and devotion. It shows that every achievement, no matter how great, should end with seeking forgiveness and praising Allah. In the months that followed, the message of Islam spread further, reaching lands and hearts that earlier seemed unreachable. The companions would often reflect on how a short surah could hold so much, meaning a lesson for nations, a reminder for leaders, and a farewell for the greatest messenger. This continuation of the journey reminds us today that every triumph must lead us closer to Allah, and every end can be beautiful when it is wrapped in faith. Surah Al-Nasr is more than a chapter. It is a legacy, a mirror of humility, and a timeless guide for every believer. As the message of Surah Al-Nasr continued to echo in the hearts of the believers, the days quietly moved forward, each one carrying a profound sense of completion. The companions could feel that an era, the most blessed era, was drawing near its final chapter, yet they held on to every moment with love and respect. One day, the Prophet delivered a sermon so powerful and so gentle that many companions wept without knowing exactly why. His voice carried a calmness, a tenderness that wrapped itself around every listener. He reminded them that he had conveyed the message, fulfilled his trust, and guided them to the straight path. He urged them to hold firmly to the Qur'an and his Sunnah after he was gone, for these too would never lead them astray. The companions listened silently, their hearts heavy yet comforted. They knew that every word from his blessed lips was a treasure, a trust they had to carry forward. During these days, the Prophet often visited the martyrs of Uhud. Standing beside their graves, he would make long dua, his eyes filled with tears, reflecting on the sacrifice of those who gave their lives for the message. It was as if he was preparing to reunite with them soon. Aisha radiyallahu anha noticed that the Prophet increased his remembrance of Allah more than ever before. He would constantly repeat, Subhanallah wa bihamdih. Ridr gwana firi, astaghfirullah wa atubu ilay. When she asked him gently, he replied with the same soft smile, My Lord has informed me that my mission is complete. These words carried a weight that she felt deep in her heart. The revelation of Surah Al-Nasr had become a quiet whisper of farewell, not in sadness, but in serenity. It reminded the believers that with every divine victory comes the responsibility to stay humble, grateful, and conscious of Allah. Because success is not the end of effort, it is the beginning of gratitude. As the days approached the farewell pilgrimage, the Prophet continued to guide, teach, correct, and inspire. His every step, every word, every prayer became a final lesson for the Ummah. The companions watched him closely, trying to memorize the rhythm of his life, knowing that he was the living Qur'an. The journey that began in the valleys of Makkah, through years of hardship, exile, battles, and endless patience, was now reaching its completion. And just like Allah promised in Surah Al-Nasr,